First of all, I'd like to thank John Chavez not only for having the courage to make the leap to come here to Dixie State College, because coming from the Midwest, that's one heck of a scary leap to take. John and I both went to the same university, unfortunately at different times. When John was at Central Michigan University, I was overseas at the University of Strathclyde, so we never got a chance to meet. But it was awesome listening to his poetry tonight, because he was talking about places where I grew up as a child. And I absolutely, you quickly become one of my best friends, John, and I love you, man, and it's so great to have you here. So once again, a round of applause. We're very lucky to have you. As a poet myself, I guess I'm not a poet. I'm a historian, and I don't have so much versatility. I tend to write poetry about my wife, about history, or about religion. Both of these poems I'm going to write tonight are overlaps of talking about history and religion, both of which were inspired by lectures I've given this week, but also inspired by my students. This first poem is one that I wrote about a year ago and performed at open mic night here before, but I gave a lecture earlier this week about the settlement of Utah and talking about a very painful experience locally here, talking about the Mountain Meadows Massacre. And I had a young missionary afterwards who came up to me after my class, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Thank you." I'm a person who very much believes in mystical experiences and spiritual experiences. I didn't feel like it was a young Mormon saying thank you. I felt like it was the Fancher party who was massacred on that day, thanking me for my words. This is a poem called A Child's Words to the Prophet. When the messenger came to you with the promise of restoration, did you foresee the sufferings they would endure? When the angel came to you as a little boy, decreeing that men are, that they might have joy, did Moroni provide you insight into what would happen when you were gone? You let the saints know of their life before this birth, and gave their families meaning here and beyond this earth, connecting generations through eternity. Many who were lost, claiming they could see. A lamb led to the slaughter, you were forced into their jail, and joined the ranks of martyrs. Your innocence was no avail. Your people traveled westward in a violent trail of tears, fleeing from the outside world. A salt lake cleansed their fears. But looking down from heaven at the church that you restored, could you and God have intervened during James Buchanan's war? In 1857, a militia stained your claims of saintly peace upon this earth, a tragedy of forgotten names. When the blood of innocents stained the red rocks in between the hills and mountain meadows, where the ghosts of children scream, crying out for a mother whose one and only crime was crossing Utah territory at the wrong time. Should the memories be forgotten of men like Isaac Haight? Will the Lord pass judgment ultimately on his fate? Or will the children's cries continue to haunt the hills? Will the oppressed become an oppressor, claiming to do your Father's will? And when the horror was left over, for years they left the dead, burnt like the Nauvoo temple, in a grave in the sands of red. Dear prophet, teach them well, and let the young ones see that the message of our Savior, the peace of Galilee. Our tongues should not be silent, forgetting the deceased. Let us speak out for justice, so Mountain Meadows can rest in peace. This other poem is actually inspired by three different people. One, the great poet Langston Hughes. Number two, my little brother Jacob, who is African American. And number three, a student this week who could not accept and would not accept any aspect of racist legacies left over from our church, and who confronted me in class and was incredibly rude. And I'd like to say back, while she was offended by the words I had to say about Brigham, I'm offended coming from a multiracial family that Brigham ever had anything negative to say about African Americans. This poem's dedicated to Langston Hughes and my little brother Jacob. I read in the papers about the Freedom Train. I heard on the radio about the Freedom Train. I seen folks talking about the Freedom Train. Lord, I've been waiting for that Freedom Train. But what do you do on the Freedom Train in a nation that's gone insane? Has the Freedom Train been derailed? Just because a black man lives in the White House doesn't mean a white man likes a black man coming over to my house. You're offended when I point out that your prophet said, black people are the agents of the devil. Well, let me tell you when I was offended. When I took my little brothers for brunch at the country club, they sat us down in the back room. They saw the nappy locks and a big grin so dark it made a Hershey's bar look like marshmallow cream. And that server, well, that bastard never did refill our drinks. Made some wise-ass joke when Jake asked if he'd have hot sauce for his chicken wings. Yeah, I want to talk about that freedom train. I want to talk about a world where a young black man has to fear getting his tires slashed because his teenage sweetheart is a white girl that comes from a KKK town. You want to tell me you're distressed when I press upon the youth that Brigham, well, that man was wrong to deny a fellow brother in Christ the right to enter the temple because of the color of his skin. Said that man was full of sin just because he was cursed in this life before his life could ever begin. And you say I'm the offensive one. You praise the virtues of Reverend King. But will you stand with me and sing the song of the Freedom Train? Hand in hand with a kid with Christ in his heart and Malcolm X on his t-shirt. There ain't no backdoor entrance on the Freedom Train. No sign for colored folk, just colored folks on the Freedom Train. No white folks only on the Freedom Train. And let me tell you, that Freedom Train, well man, it lets the fags sing show tunes, and that engineer, that fucker's a drag queen, who I knew as James growing up. But he calls herself Jamie now. She sleeks around in the front of that train with a skirt well above her knees and openly admits she'd rather be in the caboose, if you know what I mean. Her soul radiates pure love. She quotes from the Gospels etched all over her thigh in tattoos. She can count on the meek, but does she count in the meek who will someday inherit this earth? Or is she just another black queer to you? Does she not exist in your mind? Man, she can recite the words of Alma through and through. But what would you do if she paid her tithe and suddenly arrived at the temple door? Would you call her a whore? When I showed that picture of poor Emmett Till, your face went blank. You could never imagine in the land of the free that such a thing could be of an innocent life taken by two white Christians, bragging up their atrocity, a blasphemy, a testimony to Mississippi sincerity. So the next time you tell me you want to take your country back, should I take that as code, that it's not okay to be black? Don't tell me when you're a saint, when every word you speak is hate. So, what would Jesus do if he was driving that Freedom Train? He'd tell you your ticket was expired and outdated. Tell you to get the fuck off. Thanks.